I'll call it the mystery. When I was a teenager, actually in college, I was a professional magician. So, did kids' parties. And particularly for children's parties, young children, I would always tell them that I nor anyone else can really we're not really magical, we're just pretending. So that they didn't get confused about, the magical powers thing. But in playing, you are agreeing to have two different realities. My reality and your reality, or the audience's reality. They accept that, but there is this curiosity about what is really going on. But you take something like this, okay? So this is literally just a fold. But when you actually look at how this intersects, you wonder, how does that work? Ordinarily, with like a foldy thing, like a greeting card kind of pop-up, the pieces are all connected, and even though there's a little bit of mystery in terms of how it's constructed, you can sort of operate it to figure out what the mechanics are and figure out, how one part relates to another. Because you can't do this, how these two parts sort of get connected and how that angle works is, well, at least it was a little mysterious for me. Or trying to create that sense of how is that done? Almost like a magic trick. Similarly, but I really got committed to this intersection of art and design in college. I had a mentor who was one of my professors, Toshi Katayama, who was both a designer and an artist. So he taught essentially graphic design, but he was also kind of a major artist in Japan as well as the United States. I spent a lot of time with him and I became his assistant, so that I basically from the get-go had this interest in three dimensions and also making things. I'm not a very good welder. So when I started thinking about getting into sculpture, there were a few choices. I knew nothing about marble or subtractive kinds of sculpture, where you take a big thing and carve into it. It occurred to me that folding, like in paper folding, the idea of giving a flat surface some form would be a good place to start. I did a lot of experiments, and I ended up really liking the possibilities with aluminum. It comes in different thicknesses. You can cut it with a saw. You can give it form. You can machine it, but it's durable. It goes outside. It's not like plywood that you have to, or wood. So it has a lot of flexibility inside or out. Scale, you can scale it in various ways. One of the things that I also liked, apart from floor standing sculptures, that have, a 360 view, was the idea of creating sculptures on a wall. Now, some of my really early pieces were paper folded. So I would take a sheet of paper, cut it various ways, and not give it form as in like a bird or, like a origami kind of thing. It was basically a flat piece of paper that was folded back various ways, and depending upon what color was on the back and front and how many layers you had, you could create some sort of interesting compositions. So that folding planes was something that I had been doing in high school, but also very much during college and afterwards. And that was a big part of kind of my signature element of a lot of my design was this dimensionality, even in two-dimensional, theoretically two-dimensional design.
But
one of the things that I think is characteristic of many, maybe even all these pieces, is that they are basically taking their form from a plane, a flat surface, without actually cutting anything away. So there's basically a few cuts and folds, and then there's a form being given to that plane without really disturbing the integrity of the plane. So you have some things that are, let's say, more complicated. This is actually a single sheet that has nothing cut away. This is a single sheet that has nothing cut away. This knot has come directly out of this. If you unfolded this, it would be a 4x8 sheet of aluminum. Although there are some parts that are, now the back, you can actually see the whole piece and how it became or got transformed into something else. I'm really interested in that, is how you change. And that's not only how the art can change, but how we people can change without disturbing the integrity of who we are. It's really hard to be different and not change your core. A lot of these explore that idea.
and it is
One thing which I am very mindful of, which is as soon as something starts to become familiar, you have to stop doing it, because it is really about throwing things away rather than just making things that would push you forward. Most of what you're doing is throwing things away. And I think that that is a lesson which, whether it's in design or art or life, a good parable for moving on quickly as soon as you find something that's really comfortable. Except your family. Good to stick with that. But there's still challenges to that too. You've got to be renewing every day. You don't want to come across too preachy, or I certainly don't, because I can get really preachy or pedantic, or I was thinking of a word. It's not theoretical. My wife says something that I'm too cerebral. That's the word, cerebral. That I was thinking it's not intellectual because there's not a lot of intellectual depth, but there's not a lot of emotion to geometry. I could be superficial. I'm happy.